Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another program with Education Matters with me, your host, Jim O'Connell. Very pleased to have you with us. If you're watching on Tuesday afternoon, you're watching live at 6 p.m. or maybe a minute thereof. On November the 13th. And again, if you're watching live, you can call in. The call-in number is 640-3091. That's 640-3091. There is a school board meeting on tonight at 7 p.m. So if you have something on your mind and you'd like to share it with the school board, you can go to City Hall for 7 p.m. and there's an opportunity for any member of the public to go before the school board and speak for up to 3 minutes. There has been a change to that process that has been approved for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, for the school board, which is in future. People coming up to speak will not be allowed to, and I don't know how they'll be prevented, maybe ruled out of order, but under the new policy, no criticism of a school employee or a school administrator can be addressed during the public comment period. And perhaps that applies to school board members too. I'm concerned that about what the reason might be for this change. I think the chair has a duty, the mayor that is, has a duty to ensure that all comments that are made during the public contribution should be addressed to the chair. And if one had some comments to make about whatever they might be, then everything is addressed to the chair. Now, you'll see sometimes that people have not gone along with that, and I've seen occasions where individuals have named certain school board members and spoken directly to them. I think that's not right. I think it's important to maintain structure and decorum. At the same time, I also think that anything that might smack of a constraint of any kind on the public's right to know, or the ability of people to call out problems where they see them, if this has a chilling effect on that, then that troubles me. And particularly given the recent history in our city of matters being not being spoken about publicly. So there was much to do about the sexual assault at West High School a couple of years ago, because the matter was maybe up to 2 years before anybody became aware that had even happened. And then, as I spoke about the other week, there was the elimination of some employees, a principal at West High School a few years back, and most recently the elimination of the, I think, well-liked and respected principal at Webster Elementary School. And it's been very troubling to multiple people. When I talk to people in the community, people are disturbed that these things go on without anybody knowing about them. And when you go back, I dislike the issue in Manchester of the insider knowledge thing. So while understanding the need to protect people's reputations and to observe issues around liability that one might have for naming names on things, etc. There's also a terrible disservice done to somebody who is eliminated, and the truth of why they were eliminated is left for the public to guess about. So I don't know what the satisfactory solution might be to this problem, but I don't like the fact that if there was to be further if there were further problems with particularly public representatives. It's not clear that the new policy covers public representatives, but we've had public representatives both past and many in the past and current who've had their issues with matters, legal or moral issues that have not been widely known, or they burst on the scene sometimes later. I think it's important that that the public is aware of things going on in our city, and too often there's this nod, nod, wink, wink. The that which is supposed to remain unspoken of or secret because it's held in closed doors meetings. In the end, Manchester is a bit of a village, and so while the great majority of people are left unaware of what's going on, there's always the few in the know who have this this special knowledge, so to speak, and it puts them in a position to be able to connect dots later on, or to deduce things that otherwise one couldn't know if you weren't involved. So my general philosophy is that the bright light of day should be shone upon everything, especially public meetings, public servants, and things done in our names as taxpayers. I'm not somebody who's I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer. I'm not suspicious of government per se, and I certainly don't support those who make a lifetime's work of pounding on public entities with right to know requests and questions that wrap the process up and gunge things up, because public servants spend more time responding to unlimited requests for information as opposed to getting on with their jobs. So having said that and understanding that, I still I just like to know what the story is and why it was felt necessary to change the policy with regard to public comment at the school board. Maybe something in particular happened that I'm not aware of. There were occasions in the past where school board members were maybe attacked is too strong a word, or maybe not so strong, for their stances on things that I thought went too far. And in those cases, I would have faulted the mayor, not necessarily the current mayor, but perhaps her too, but previous mayors who didn't immediately stop the conversation when somebody comes before the board as a citizen of the city of Manchester and a taxpayer in the city of Manchester, and comes before to speak on something of concern to them. As soon as they begin to attack somebody, I think it behooves the chair to say, please reserve, make your comments to the chair. I think there isn't a problem with naming somebody, in my view. So perhaps it would be better if the chair looked after this rather than policy saying the minute that I become aware of something, I'm no longer allowed to. I'm not allowed to speak on it because it involves somebody. So if I find that a school board member or an administrator or somebody has done something untoward or something I'm concerned about, then I'm precluded from bringing that up at a public meeting. I think that's a problem. I do support the background to this, which is that the new policy says that matters involving personnel and administrators, etc., rightfully should go to the administration and be dealt with at that point and not be brought up in public forum. My problem is that if you bring something to the administration that it's not dealt with adequately or to one's satisfaction, or one doesn't get a response, and then you're only other than writing a letter to the union leader as a local taxpayer, why should one not be able to go before the Board of School Committee and voice one's concern there? So I'm just a little troubled that has gone on that way. Let me just address a couple of things, sort of housekeeping issues, if you want to call it that. There are the ongoing meetings with the superintendent. There's a bit of a gap before the next one. At 7:30 a.m. on the morning of December 5th, at Highland Goffs Falls Elementary School. The superintendent will be there at 7:30 in the morning, where you'll be able to meet with him and listen to what he has to say, and perhaps address any concerns you might have. Not necessarily about Highland Goffs Falls, but about that school or any other one. And then again, the following afternoon, December 6th, at the middle school at Parkside, at 4:30 p.m. on December 6th. So those are the next two dates coming up for Dr. Vargas. A couple of other things, I guess, the stuff that's coming up now over the next, if I could find my page here on this computer. Yeah, so we have Thanksgiving coming up very shortly. So next week, schools will be closed on Wednesday the 21st, and then the 22nd and 23rd for Thanksgiving. And of course, there was no school yesterday for Veterans Day, and last week I finished this program without addressing Veterans Day, and it's a holiday that's particularly close to my heart, and so I think it's very important that that people take a moment to recognise the sacrifice of our military and the families of our military, and those who have been lost and injured or wounded in the name of freedom, etc. I was very happy to see this year that at the Veterans Day parade on Sunday morning, that there was at least a good representation from the mayor was there, as well as members of the board of aldermen and school board, and that was good to see, because the previous year I thought it was embarrassing that a very small number, I don't remember exactly, but maybe 4 or 5 public representatives we have, excluding statewide offices and or at least people representing us at the State House. Just here in Manchester, with 14 school board members and 14 aldermen and the mayor, there are 29 local representatives, and to see 3 or 4 at a Veterans Day parade last year was a problem. So I was delighted to see. I didn't count them, but there was probably 50% of them were there. So marching on Elm Street on Sunday, and it was a beautiful day. It was a little chilly, but not cold by New Hampshire terms, by Manchester terms. And but I have to say that a couple of things. First of all, kudos to our schools for being there, because the 3 high schools, West, Memorial and Central high school bands marched in the parade, and as usual did a great job. The ROTC program from West did themselves proud as they marched. There was what I would say a smattering of veterans there representing various theatres of war or periods, etc. But all in all, it was a pretty disappointing turnout, and that's at the parade itself. And then the turnout on behalf of the public. It's a very short parade. The Veterans Day parade perhaps lasts, 40 minutes. There was a moment of silence observed at 11 o'clock to mark the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. And while this weekend was the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, and there aren't any people left. Sadly, there are a few left who are Second World War veterans. But it was a momentous day, I think, when we celebrate, or perhaps celebrate might be the wrong word, when we remember atrocious conditions and battles of World War One. And so my point is only that I was disappointed that there were fewer people there. I was imagining as I was on the sidewalk on Sunday morning that if I were a Gold Star family, if I had had gone through the pain of having lost a loved one in Iraq or Afghanistan or in earlier wars, if I came downtown in Manchester on Veterans Day, I would have been disappointed by the turnout. And frankly, let me not be afraid to sort of call out the veterans themselves, because there are a lot of veterans in Manchester. And I was sorry, I'm just getting texts over here. I was disappointed that more of them didn't show up and fly the flag, so to speak. But anyway, it's an important day. And it's important for all of us to remember. I would say this to people who are not familiar with our schools, perhaps, that there are sometimes I hear people talk about a number of things in our schools that are untrue. And a lot of things annoy me when I hear people talking about that which is untrue. But one of the things is that there's a lack of history and patriotism and an understanding of how this country got to be the great nation that it is. That isn't well understood or taught in our schools. And then aligned with that, the issue that somehow kids today are not taught civics and government and civic pride and all those things. And it simply is not true. It's out there in the sort of in the popular imagination that these things are true, and those who like to malign our public schools are always busy saying, it's the whole sort of young people of today nonsense, which is blatant garbage, because the young people of today are as good as young people of any previous generation, and maybe better than many. This sort of rose-tinted glasses view of when we were young, we did this. I just find that annoying, and that's fair enough. I'm not here to change the world. The very people who often talk about these things, if they were sat for a moment and questions were posed to them about, can you name the justices of the Supreme Court? Can you name the president, vice president? Can you name the number of Congress people that we have? Can you address the articles of the Constitution? Can you address the amendments? Can you and they'd all be going, they imagine sort of that they know this stuff, but actually they don't. But they love to laugh at some kid who gets a microphone stuck under his face on some late night show and is asked who's the secretary for the Veterans Affairs, and it's like we're all shocked that the kid doesn't know. But if you went into any bar, restaurant, or supermarket in Manchester and you took out your microphone and you stuck it under the nose of the average 55-year-old who's convinced of the fact that the next generation has gone to hell in a handbasket, and you find out they don't know a hell of a lot either. And by the way, I don't think it's a necessary condition of being a good person and a good citizen to be able to roll off the tongue all the facts about the constituent parts of our democracy. For those of us who are interested, great, that's our interest, but I don't think it makes one a bad person or a less good American if you can't sort of name some of the salient facts. But back to the school district. It is a canard that goes on and on and on, that somehow our schools today are not doing a great job of turning out great citizens. And you only have to look, I can speak mostly about Central High School because that's where my children are or have been, and again, and at Hillside Middle School, where again they were taught their particularly New Hampshire history and Constitution, etc. If people actually had kids in the system, then they would know that these things are taught. on a now that I mentioned Hillside for a minute, and I'm sorry for being a little parochial, but there are a lot of things coming up in our schools over the coming weeks, and I suggest people go on to the mansd.org website and have a look, and sometimes perhaps step outside the comfort zone, so to speak, and have a look at what's going on in some of the other schools. Some schools do a better job of publicizing, or putting on the web what they have going on. None of them include everything. There are more things not included on the school board or school district's website than are there. But that's a function of people supplying the information to the schools or to the website. And by the way, there's a spot there for any parent or even an interested citizen. If you're watching this program, I presume you're interested in the education of children in the city of Manchester. I doubt many people are watching this show for my rugged good looks or anything. So the presumption is if you're watching because education is important to you and education in Manchester is important to you. And if it is, you're looking for a place to play, so to speak, here's a wonderful opportunity. All the schools, I think, could do with help with keeping up to date with that which is going on, etc. So as we approach Thanksgiving, and in elementary schools there'll be multiple things going on commemorating Thanksgiving and the pilgrims and all that stuff. The schools also have, this is the time of year when school plays and winter concerts are coming up. So if you've got a kid in the high schools or in the middle schools also who are in band or orchestra or chorus, there's a series of concerts that are announced now coming up over the next month or so. But just a couple of things that are coming up this weekend at Central on Friday the 16th and Saturday the 17th at 6 p.m. The Maskers, which is the theatre group at Central High School, has their play on Friday night at 6 and Saturday night at 6. So if you want to have a night, go over to Central High School at 6 o'clock on the 16th or 17th, and watch the young people of Manchester, or in this case Central, performing in their play, the name of which escapes me right now. But I was there at the last one, and it was just wonderful to see the quality of the work the young adults there were doing. And why not? Go out, take your husband or wife and or friend, and go and get. I think it might be $8 or something for adults and $5 for kids or for students. I'm sure no one will put a gun to the head of somebody who can't afford to pay the full fare. I'm presuming that would be the case. But why not go and be done by 8 o'clock or 8:30, and in plenty of time to go walk down the street to Elm Street and enjoy some of the have a Friday night or Saturday night food and drinks with some friends. So I think that'll be a fun way to spend this weekend. There's also at Hillside, Peter Pan Jr. is on, not this weekend, but in a couple of weeks. That's on November the 30th, Friday, November 30th at 7 o'clock. And then on December 1st, Saturday afternoon at 12, and again that afternoon of December 1st at 6 p.m. That's Peter Pan Jr., which is on at Hillside Middle School, and that's a wonderful place. You could kill a number of birds with one stone, so to speak. If you have kids in elementary school who go to any of the schools in that corner of the city, who will eventually end up in the next years going to Hillside, it's an opportunity to go visit the school, see a play, even on Saturday afternoon at 12 o'clock. By then it should be a little colder than it is today. It's 2 weeks' time, so what a fun thing to do. I absolutely would like to endorse the other events that are going on in the other schools, the other middle schools and high schools in our city. I just don't have that information in front of me. I do try, ladies and gentlemen. I have a Facebook page for Education Matters that I anytime that I get information, I put a piece on today actually about a a bingo night for a fundraiser for West High School soccer team. That's on my Facebook page on under Education Matters if you go on there. So I do try to put the stuff up there, but you know, it would be a full-time job to keep track of all of it. But that's some of the stuff that's going on. Another change, of course, that's happening right now is that the school district is vacating their condo on McGregor Street and moving to the new school district headquarters over at West High School. The official address is 20 Hecker Street, and they're moving on November the 19th. So right after Thanksgiving, they'll be there. They've asked people to sort of bear with them in that first week that they're there, but the school district will no longer be at McGregor Street after November 19th. I haven't seen the new facility at West High School, but I was told by those who have seen it that the contractors there have done a wonderful job, and I think it's nice. It'll be nice to see that building more vibrant than it has been in the last number of years. The fact, and this move of the school district in there is not in and of itself going to resolve the bigger issues, perhaps, but I think it is not to be overly harsh or anything, but I think it is I was going to say a stain on the record, but maybe that's too strongly put. But it's certainly a failing, let's say that. It's a failing of all school board members and the mayor over the last 10 years or more, since Bedford left West High School, and even going back to when Bedford announced it was leaving West High School. And there was a 4-year transition period where they went from having 4 grades to 3 to 2, and eventually the final graduating class from Bedford. So we had a lot of time and a lot of notice about the fact that over 1,000 students would be leaving West High School, or around 1,000 will be leaving West High School to go and have their education in the newly built West High School, Bedford High School, and the fact that this was left to languish and no decision was made about a redistricting issue or a resizing or adding programs. There was so much discussion over time about academies and making West a science academy, a science and math academy, making it a music and arts academy. There were lots of discussions. Somebody even suggested at one point, if I recall, I do recall, somebody suggested that the school be handed to the town of Hooksett and allow them to manage West High School, and we would pay them to have our students there. A little convoluted, I know, but of all of those things, nothing was actually done. And in recent years, there was the effort that Mayor Gatsis, along with former Mayor Baines, not former Mayor Gatsis too, of course, led with the STEAM Ahead program at West High School. But that was a program put in place, in my view, in the absence of doing something that was actually going to make a real. The hope I think was, and certainly Mayor Gatsis, if one was to hear what he had to say at the time, his thought was that the STEAM Ahead program would be so robust and so great and so innovative and so different that that there would be people knocking down doors trying to get into West High School. And of course, once again, with all due respects to all of that, and I don't want to relitigate and reanalyze all of that, but when you're constantly creating programs out of whole cloth, out of nothing, and you're rejiggling things around and giving it a name, etc., that's not. It's unlikely to attract people in numbers. And in the end, I take no joy in pointing out that as Hooksett was departing our district, and they still have the option of any parent in Hooksett can choose to send their kid to West High School. Paid for by Hooksett. It's one of the approved schools, so to speak, from that parents at Hooksett can choose. As you may know, if you've got a child in Hooksett, you can choose between sending your child to West High School, Memorial. Not Memorial. I don't think Memorial. West High School, Central High School, Bow High School, Pinkerton High School, perhaps Pembroke Academy. I'm not certain. Londonderry High School, and they have multiple agreements with these schools, and so people end up going in many different directions. The fact is that I don't know about this year because I haven't looked at it, but in the preceding years, not a single kid from Hooksett has chosen, or parent has chosen, to send their child to West. So, not wanting to get wrapped up on that, but I'm delighted to see that the school district is moving over there. I'm hopeful that things will continue to improve. But in the end, the school board should have made decisions about West a long time ago. With that in mind, I want to address another issue, and I've got a lot of smaller things that I want to touch off of tonight. But one of them is I know that a program, there was much gnashing of teeth in the city over the so-called HOPE program at West High School, which was funded to the extent of $30,000 at West High School last year by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. This actually it's called a program. It's not actually a program in my view. It's the nephew of Alderman Dan O'Neill who was given, the proposal was for $30,000 of taxpayers' money to be given to somebody to work with 15 kids who were at risk of dropping out or having issues at West High School. The fact that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen reached into the pockets that it says it has nothing in, and pulled out of the magician's hat a $30,000 figure that nobody, I don't know how they came up with it, and they decided that despite the fact that we have the highest number of pupils per teacher in the state of New Hampshire, and despite the fact that on the education side we spend less as a proportion of our total tax revenues than all other similar size cities in the state, or larger cities in the state, and thirdly the fact that we spend less per student than everybody else in the state, I thought it was appalling. Talk about the optics being bad. But to decide that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, over the heads of the school board members and the school board, found itself with $30,000 that, oh, by the way, happened to go to pay the nephew of one of the aldermen to go to West High School. Now, I find that all problematic, and that's nothing against the individual, Matt, who's certainly, I think his heart is in the right place and means well and has done some good. I'm not denying those things, but the idea that without the proper process, no RFP, no public involvement, no proof of concept, with no qualifications that I am aware of other than good intent and a wish to do the right thing, I think it's a shocking way to run a city. If it were, I'm calling this, I have to tell you that Dan O'Neill I count among my friends, and so it doesn't sit easily for me to use his name and to throw brickbats. But in this case, in order to be honest with myself, this is appalling, and even those many who supported it are friends of mine, and I still find it appalling. If it were the nephew of other school board members or other aldermen, I'd be up in arms about it, and I'm up in arms about it here. So that's my first problem with this program, so-called program, this job for a nephew of, because I want to be clear, not to be controversial, but this is not a program like there's a company that runs a program, and this program has been used in 4 other cities, and now it's coming to Manchester. It's not that. Let's just be clear. This is a guy who is the nephew of an alderman who with all good intentions, wants to work with young people at risk in the city, and the city is cash strapped and has no money for any of the things it needs to do, but it finds $30,000 of taxpayers' money to pay the Alderman at Large's nephews, give him a paycheck of $30,000 to go into the school and talk to 15 kids or work with 15 kids. Now, people get very, and I talked to somebody today who said, that this program, and I don't like calling it a program, that this effort had helped some kids, and that so long as it was helping kids, it was a good thing. Well, frankly, I don't think it does anybody a service. When I see kids, and I see them all day long, 40% of special needs children in the city of Manchester do not get the services they need. There are children in our schools in need of speech therapy and all kinds of other services. Some of them that have been mandated by courts, and the city has been told it must supply the needs of these students, and it still refuses to do it, saying it can't afford it. And when we have, and with all the programs that we have cancelled over the years, and the remedial programs that have been done away with, and the PASS program, which was an actual program that was designed to help kids who were in danger of dropping out and to do academic recovery and stuff like that, and had a proven record of doing it. That program was cancelled. So as a city, we've taken an old word, a scythe. Those of you old enough will remember a scythe was a thing for cutting, a handheld instrument for cutting grass. Yeah, I'm getting old, I guess. But we took a scythe, a machete then, in the modern parlance. We took a machete to programs all across the city in the last 10 years. We cut and we've slashed and we've burned and we've reduced and we've asked people to do something with nothing, and it is just my ire about this topic is that in the face of all of that, and with children in need of services all over the city, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, made up of good-intentioned people, many of them, found $30,000 to give to the nephew of one of the aldermen at large, so that he could go into West High School. It beggars belief, and what really annoys me is that good-intentioned, good people have supported this. And I talked to a school board member today who said to me that they believe in, they're not, the answer was, I'm not a process person, I'm more a results person, and this program has had some results. Well, my contention is if you took $30,000 and put it into any of our high schools, or if you brought a program in, or if you gave it to some of the excellent, fully qualified people that we have today, that you would have a similar result. Let me take an incoming call here.
Michael on line one.
Hi, Michael. Go ahead. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate tonight, but I thought I would add a couple more things if you have time.
Please. Yeah.
One thing you failed to mention is that this person who runs the program is also the nephew of a pretty prominent school teacher in the city. And if you could also comment tonight about principals who are allowing kids to listen to explicit music at the dances that they try to raise funds at, despite people complaining about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, and I think Mike has called in on another occasion, and I'm finding the shallowness of my knowledge, I guess, sometimes. And I've said here numerous times before that one should be careful in Manchester, and I say this to incoming school board members and people new to the fray, so to speak, to be careful, about establishing strong beliefs early, because there's a lot goes on that we don't always know. So to take the second item first, the listening to explicit music. So there's something that I am again not aware of, Mike, for the second time I think in 2 weeks of something. I think last when you called, it was about. Well, let's not go into that. The explicit music. I think it would be a problem if explicit music is listened to. Again, there's a line here, right, about our parents didn't like, or the people, or our grandparents perhaps, didn't like people listening to Elvis Presley because his shaking hips were going to ruin the world. And the morals of the world, and again, some of the lyrics in some modern music are terrible. The misogyny, the violence, the foul language is awful, and there are clean versions, so to speak, whatever that means. There are cleaned up versions of that music that's available, because they play those versions on the radio, and then when you acquire it through some electronic medium, it has the explicit words in there. But I'm surprised to hear that, and I'd be shocked, and I think it is a problem, and I think principals should not allow that to happen. With regard to the nephew of a school teacher, yes, I do recognise that the gentleman that I'm talking about, who the Hope, the person who wants the job working as the Hope person at West High School, is also, besides being the nephew of an alderman, is also a nephew of a school teacher. Fair enough. I just don't know where his uncle stands on this topic. I do know that the problem that I'm identifying is one of proper governance, and so that's why I'm talking about Dan O'Neill, the alderman at large, who argued in favour of and voted for the spending of $30,000, and this is the same alderman who basically, said to me at other times that there's nothing we can do, and this is the best we can do, and that's it, and that didn't want to be bothered about the fact that we had the least well-funded school system in the state. And he also has said to me in the past that giving money to the school board was, well, he didn't say waste of time, but effectively that's what he meant, that they were sort of profligating their spending and spent it on other things, which actually is just a farce and untrue. So not that it never happened, but I'm just saying that we've proven over many years now, and Dr. Vargas proved 2 years ago, that when he got money, when he asked for money to be earmarked for specific things, and the money was found to do it, it was used for those specific things. And anybody looking at the school system today knows that it is in need of help. So thanks for the call again, Mike. The issue with that issue with West and the so-called program there. I know they were going before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen tonight. I just find it. I look at the many places in our city, ladies and gentlemen. There are people. I know people who are giving of themselves hugely, and have done it for many years. There are places like the Boys and Girls Club, or PAL, or the International Institute, or INTI. There are all kinds of groups who are working with young people and bringing them hope and bringing them help, and etc. all across the city. And besides those which are programs, there are numerous individuals. I think of one gentleman right now who's a friend of mine, and I'm very proud to be a friend of his, who is working, and I'm not going to name him because he prefers not to be named, but he is working, putting Trojan work into the Beach Street school area, and the central, saving the central, Manchester Central Little League program, which he did almost single-handedly, and then created the central Manchester Central soccer program, which is supplied free of charge to many young people. He's been he and his family have been running homework nights at the Lemire Centre and many other things. That are all of it done for free without anybody being asked anything. I talked to a gentleman now close to a year ago who spent 10 years working on a program in the west side of Manchester with young people, and he said to me that at the end of his 10th year, a great guy who was multilingual, so he had the advantage of being able to address some kids in their native language as well. But he said to me after 10 years last year, he wasn't leaving in a huff or anything like that, but he was saying, I've given it 10 years, I've got to look after my own family, my kids are growing up, I can't afford to do this any longer, so I'm handing it off. And of course things fell apart a little bit when he was handing off. But there's a guy who never came to the city or to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and wasn't related to anybody, who spent hours and hours and hours and weeks and days, countless parts of his life, working with the poor and immigrant and others, children and students on the west side of the city. When I think about the gentleman at Central, in the central part of the city, down by Beach Street School, a guy who gives, 5 nights a week to volunteer causes in the city of Manchester, and has worked with, young people all over the place. I think of a gentleman over at Memorial High School who, for years, used to take the boys of families who couldn't afford it, and he would bring them in his minivan, and he drove them to their sports games, and he drove them to the seacoast, and he drove them down to Boston, and he drove them so they too could be part of travel basketball teams in that, and other teams. And he loaded up his minivan weekend after weekend, Thursday night in the rain and snow, and Friday nights, and he never went to City Hall and said, please, can you give me $30,000 to pay for my gas, because I'm bringing all these kids, and I've saved, X number of kids over the last 10 years. So this might sound like there's something that I've got something against this particular program. I'm against the whole idea of a public representative arguing without saying it publicly and explicitly that, oh, by the way, this is my close blood relative and I want to get $30,000 to give to him. Not a program led by him, not a program that he's the president of, not a program that he began and there's 10 people working in it, but actually we're going to call him, instead of giving the check directly to him, I want $30,000 of taxpayers' money. I want my buddies on the board to vote for it, and I'm going to give it to a thing called Hope, so actually my nephew can go cash the check. So that's the part that annoys me about that, and I'm sorry to go on about it, and maybe I'm not making too many friends by being blunt, but I just want to be consistent, because I got to tell you, just in the same way as a couple of weeks ago when someone was talking about Mayor Craig shouldn't be blamed for stuff because she's just one person and she can't do anything without the board, and I like Mayor Craig and I support Mayor Craig, but I fully want to state that I couldn't be true to myself or to be honest or objective if I wasn't clear that when I was sitting here talking about Mayor Gatsis and what he didn't do and his lack of leadership, I acknowledged that he was one of 15, the 15th member with the 14 others, but I wasn't cutting him any slack. In the end, he's the leader, and in the end, for good and for bad, Mayor Craig will get the benefit of the good things that happen, and she'll get the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune thrown at her when things go badly. So, moving again, today Manchester Proud had an event today at Veterans Park, and sadly it was raining, of course, but there was a tent there, and it was nice to see people. I'm reminded because Mayor Craig was there and she gave a speech, and Arthur Sullivan of Brady Sullivan spoke there, and some others. There was a wonderful young lady actually from a junior from West High School who spoke very eloquently about her pride in Manchester and the need for the whole community to come together to support the city. I think it's important to note that we have a small, maybe it's only one guy, because one one school board member Gerard, has come out and said that he doesn't support Manchester Proud any longer because he thinks it has some agenda. This at a time when Manchester Proud has made no decisions about determining the strategy or the programme or what they're going to propose for going forward in Manchester. What they are doing is listening, and they've gone out canvassing people and had lots of conversations, and they're seeking people's opinions to listen to, and I think it was interesting to see today some business leaders, people from the Chamber of Commerce, people like Arthur Sullivan and others talking about the need for Manchester to do something about schools. And Arthur Sullivan was particularly interesting because there was a time when Mayor Gatsis didn't want to listen to the fact that our schools and their lack of funding was putting a brake on the ability of the city to grow and develop. And he refused to listen to that because, of course, the consequences of admitting to it would have been he'd have to stand up and tell people, this tax cap is a nonsense, or we'll go up to Concord and we'll fight for more money there. And he wasn't willing to do either for, I think, it was politically unpalatable to him. But Arthur Sullivan made it clear in his speech today at Veteran Park for Manchester Proud, and he said the moment of denouement, the moment of realisation, the moment when he decided that this was something that was that something had to be done, was he was on the phone with a large with a company who had a large amount of space in one of his buildings in Manchester, and as he jokingly said, I was a good landlord, and the property was good, and their business was good, and they were growing, and the owner of the business, or the CEO of the business, said they were moving their business out and moving elsewhere. And this was Arthur Sullivan's speech today in Manchester, and he said that that was the moment that he realised that, he asked the guy why, and the guy said it was because of the schools. He said, we're trying to, in order to grow a business, we need to attract talented people to our to work for us, and we've got a great company, and we've got great offerings, and we pay well, and we've got. But he said, when we're trying to get top talent, they come, we interview them, and he said, this business owner said, too many of them, they're ready to move to Manchester to accept a job offer. They look at the school system and they say, sorry, they won't accept the job offer. So they couldn't stay here any longer because they're not. Now, that news is coming from Arthur Sullivan, and I don't know what politics Arthur Sullivan has, but my understanding is, and I apologise if I'm incorrect because it's a vague recollection, but as I understand it, I think that Brady Sullivan was a primary contributor to the Ted Gatsis campaign over time, which means that, if Rich Gerard was worried about, or Mr. Gerard was worried about, this being some progressive, group that's ready to, force him to actually pay for the school system, then I think that that's not what Arthur Sullivan represents. But to see people there from the law firms downtown, from Southern New Hampshire University, there were people there from businesses, like I said, the Chamber of Commerce, and Manchester pretending that the fact that we've the least well-funded school system in the state is not a problem. Those days have to be over, and we haven't got to there yet. I've been fighting this battle for a long time now, and we still can't get a consensus around the fact that We do spend less than everybody else. We can't have a non-consensus on that, because the fact is simply the fact. What we can't yet get a consensus on is that that's part of the problem. People will say, well, that's not, and I don't want to waste time with it. But it was good to see Manchester Proud moving forward today. There was a banner put up over Elm Street, and that was the immediate reason for the meeting today at this morning at 10 o'clock at Veterans Park, and it was good to see some people there. And the free coffee wasn't bad either. And it was nice to see Central High School band, or a subsection of them, like the jazz band or something, came and played in the rain. Maybe 20 of them came and played, and that was fun. And thanks to Mr. Doyle, the director of music and band director over at Central High School. In the last few minutes, I'd just like to recognise that we have had an election in the period since our last Education Matters program here, and as a result of that election, there's been a change in the House and the Senate in New Hampshire, with now what was a Republican majority in both those houses now being a Democratic majority. And I don't wish anybody ill at all. The Manchester representatives, who were up in Concord, some of the leading voices who were promoting the Senate bill, which was basically the privatization voucher bill, were defeated. And I want to be clear, if in the off chance that some of those representatives or their friends are watching, I thank them for their service, and I thank them for putting their names forward. But after that, I don't want to be unkind, but because of their stance on education, I am glad that they're no longer there. And not to be hurtful, but just to be clear, because being up in Concord, voting to remove funds from Manchester School District was a step too far. I'm just sorry that some of the other people who were there wearing their yellow scarves on behalf of outside of the state entities are still there. But the point I want to make in the last moments here is that now that we have a change, I think it's easy to blame the people in office when you disagree with them philosophically, perhaps. Well, now we're going to see what the measure of these people who ran for public office. There is a change from Republican to Democrat in the State House, both in the Senate and the House, and now I'll be putting it up to them in the coming weeks and months over the next 2 years to see what results we get from the public having made that change. Clearly, they rejected the philosophy of the previous administrations or the previous majorities who were downsizing costs from Concord down to Manchester, increasing the tax burden, even though they love to say we're for smaller government and we're against taxes and vote for me and I'll keep your taxes low. But they had no problem with voting for items that shifted the cost from the state down to the taxpayers of Manchester, who are already burdened enough. And so to see them gone as a result of that, I'm delighted to see it. But now I expect to see the now Democratic majority to stand up and be counted and give us your answers. What is the answer to adequately funding the public school system in the state of New Hampshire? We have the least well-funded school system in the college system in the United States, the most expensive in-state tuition for a university system, etc. And our students graduate with the highest amount of college debt of any state in the United States. So over the coming weeks and months, we'll be talking about this and holding our public representatives, our newly elected public representatives, to account to see them do the people's work that we'd like them to do. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you again next week when we'll be getting ready for Thanksgiving. All the best now. Good night from Jim O'Connell.